Okay, I am live on YouTube as well, and I am live on LinkedIn as well. So that solves the problem. That's great. So there we begin. Ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum, 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 ba-bum, bum, 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 bum. All right, first episode of Thinkers Frequency. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thinkers Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our wives, husbands, our friends, everybody. I hope not other people's husbands and wives. And just when we thought things could get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Things just got better, friends, with Thinker's Frequency. This morning, we began our journey of reading between the lines. Things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Like, imagine tuning into a fun session of insights and analysis, which doesn't lead to paralysis right before you start your day. Well, your imagination just came true. But before we begin, I'd like you to take a sip. In fact, we'll all have a sip together. We call it the simultaneous sip. It's supposed to be lucky. All you need is a cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having just some electrolytes with water. Very necessary. And here we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. This is great. So let me just share the live streaming links with my WhatsApp audience, and so they can join as well. You know, I have many people on WhatsApp who will basically need to get informed. One second. Dear folks, we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube with the first episode of Thinkers Frequency. Tune in. Yours truly, Nishant Mittal, LinkedIn and YouTube. So there it is. I hope it works. I hope it works. I hope it works for everybody. All right. So we begin our analysis. The first news for the day is VC funding influencers power India's supplements craze amid lingering safety concerns. Pills promotion and a dose of doubt. Over 500 million raised by health supplement startups, gummies, powders, and pills, and marketing costs are up. Everything is up. But when it comes to dose of doubt, as far as pills and supplements is considered, let me give you a big dose of doubt as far as the market for medicines is considered. So, a research just came out a few months from now in October 2024, which studied the peer review industry. Now, the peer review industry is essentially a very big industry. It wasn't supposed to be an industry, so the entire science works with peer reviews. So you publish a research and then it gets peer reviewed, and those peer reviews are supposed to be objectively looking at the science, right? But what they found out with that peer review was that the peer reviews are getting $1 billion in the last 3 years from pharma or equipment manufacturing companies. So people are publishing their researches and then just paying the peer reviewers to say what they want. Now, a lot of regulations exist for authors and publishers of researches, but not a lot of regulations exist for peer reviewers. Peer reviewers essentially like are the guardrails without any guardrails, right? But they're they're paid off. So when they talk about pills, promotions, and dose of doubt, as far as supplements are considered, what about the dose of doubt as far as medicines are considered? Because if $1 billion are being spent in 3 years just for peer reviewing, you can imagine the state of science. You can imagine the state of science. It's pretty incredible. It is pretty incredible, right? Okay, so the next news of the day is essentially RBI extending lending to NBFCs during crisis. RBI is essentially looking at NBFCs and mutual funds during crisis. Crisis, why? Because at the height of the financial euphoria, a lot of loans were being extended uh, to credit card holders and with the buy now pay later thing, and and that sort of led to contagion risk because not great recovery. When you're lending to people like crazy, it seems that the recovery can be a problem, and it did prove to be a problem. And thus RBI is stepping in to help the NBFCs. They've already asked them to tone down their loans. They've already asked them to not go overboard with everything, but it seems like actually have to step in and provide them the cushion to survive. The third news for the day is JSW. JSW is looking to acquire AxoNoble for $1 billion and more. This is especially interesting because JSW's acquisition of Bhushan Steel has gotten derailed by Supreme Court after 5 years of its uh, implementation, which is crazy. So it was the Committee of Creditors and the NCLT. Everybody, they sold off, the IBC actually sold off Bhushan Steel to JSW, and their resolution plan was accepted, and the resolution plan was moved forward with. But and that happened in like 2021, and 4 years hence they are seeing that Supreme Court has said that that resolution plan is basically illegal, and it's not gonna hold ground. So they've cancelled it. So now JSW has got to return Bhushan Steel to the Committee of Creditors and also wants its refund after having bought something and taken care of it for 5 years. They want a refund, and they want it back. And most interestingly, they just want to go back to the state where they actually bought Bhushan Steel. So the thing is, when you buy something, you obviously invest a lot in it. You invest your money, your manpower, your time to make something come back. But if something comes back and then it's taken back from you, that sort of leads to a lot of big problems, which is what's going on when it comes to JSW. Very interestingly, very interestingly, what we are looking forward to is essentially made in India tech, you know, with Operation Sindhur and everything else. Made in India tech is looking at a fillip, and that's a very very good news for everybody who holds HAL stock. HAL, uh, MDL, BEL, BHEL, BE, Paras Defense. A lot of these companies are going to get a fillip or should get a fillip because India's defense budget currently stands at around $80 billion. $80 billion. But most of it just goes on pensions, salaries, and maintenance of the forces. A very small amount goes to capital outlay, which is the equipment part of things, which is some $20 billion, out of which $15 billion goes to new equipment purchases, and $12 billion goes to the indigenous made in India weapons purchases. So that $12 billion is going to go to HAL, MDL, BEL, and so on and so forth. And if they are looking at uh, raising that, the direct beneficiaries of that would be HAL, BEL, MDL, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty good news. That's pretty good news for everybody. And then you might just be looking at these companies actually exporting their uh, you know their products to outside India. Now, a very interesting thing is that there's a global shortage of nurses, and India is trying to fill that shortage of nurses because, as per data, Indian nurses only earn up to 1.2 to 6 lakh rupees an annum per annum, while the same nurses in UK earn 27 to 45 lakh rupees per annum, 27 to 50 lakh rupees per annum. Canada 30 to 60 lakhs, and Australia 30 to 65 lakhs. So a lot of nurses are trying to go outside India to make a better buck. But the scenario is that Indian population is also getting old. And if Indian population gets old and India proves to be the place where there's shortage of nurses, which already exists by the way. Elder care is a booming market in India, and there's a serious skill mismatch as far as Indian availability of nurses is considered, both for inpatient care and outpatient care. So when there's hospitals, you need nurses there, and when patients are moved back to their houses, they need nurses there. And India itself is finding that troublesome. So what happens if India actually proves to be an exporter of nurses? Would it lead to better outcomes for folks in UK? Of course. But how would that fare for Indian elder healthcare? That's something to be looked at. It's going to be very interesting. Now, you're looking at Trump tariff threats and uncertainty. A lot of information is floating around about Trump's tariff threats and how they are basically leading to a lot of uncertainty. The tariffs on Apple, the tariffs on everybody else that Trump claims to be imposing. I have a view on this, like everybody else, but that view is rooted in economics 101. So when people criticize Trump's tariffs, and when people say that tariffs are not going to work because America doesn't have manufacturing, and America cannot make it expensive for American workers or American consumers to buy those same products, because tariffs, the biggest criticism of tariffs is that at the end of the day, people end up paying for it, right? The price of products goes up and the government taxes it. So it's an indirect tax. But that is true only till the moment somebody starts making in America. So let's say if Trump raises tariffs, and yes, they sold out America 1990s when they let China be a part of WTO, and they outsourced every manufacturing. But the moment any manufacturer steps inside and starts making something, then Adam Smith's invisible hand starts to play. Because then there's only so high you can price yourself. There's something called price elasticity or inelasticity. And if somebody is making something in America and he has a competitive advantage due to tariffs, that's economics 101. That's the plan to save America. That's what India should be doing. That's what everybody should be doing. And they're trying. You know, localism is the new globalism. When it comes to Apple, and if it gets a 25% tariff from India, it could be a negotiation tactic. It could be just another bluff by Team Trump. But if any mobile manufacturer takes the cue and moves to America, and companies start having real competition from people manufacturing in America, that's when you see the results happening. And that is not a distant dream. That happens all the time. you know Moving on from America, it's basically RBI is saying don't listen to social media influencers for finance advice, because only 2% of registered are registered out of 98%. Sure. But who cares? Who cares? Is it gonna solve anything? Are people not gonna give advice? How can you sort this out? So this is basically just optics. When it comes to optics, it's just optics. Very interestingly, India is to be a $30 trillion economy by 2047. 2047 is 22 years from now. That's an impressive framing, because you're talking about 22 years in advance. Right now we are a $4 trillion economy, and we have reached a per capita income of 2880, roughly $3,000, 2.4 lakh rupees, 2.3 lakh rupees. And Niti Aayog says we might just become a $30 trillion economy by 2047. So if we have a 7% growth rate for the next 10 years, we will be double. That is uh, $8 trillion, $8 or $9 trillion. We'll be at $9 trillion if we grow at the same growth rate that we are growing at right now, 6.5, 6.8%. That's going to be $8 trillion. And then from $8 trillion in 2035, from 2035 to 2045, if we keep growing at 7% again, we'll be at $16 trillion. So 7% for 20 years straight, and we'll be looking at 2045, $16 trillion. But Niti Aayog says that we're going to be double of that. So we'll at least have to grow like 11% per year, for the next 22 years straight. 11 years per year, 22 years straight. Well, that's something. That's going to be cool. That's going to be cool. We'll be very happy. Per capita income of $14,000 makes a country rich. $14,000 is 8 lakhs, 12 lakh rupees essentially. 12 lakh rupees, right? So 12 lakh rupees is rich. As I said, I even wrote a post on per capita income, a very, very detailed piece. So we might just reach that $14,000 per capita income somewhere soon, about in 10 or 22 years, as Niti Aayog says, which is very interesting. by 2047. That's what they say. So Chirag says, we assume we'll keep growing and others will just sit and keep watching us grow. Yeah, that's also pretty wishful. That's pretty wishful, I'm sure, because that usually doesn't happen. So, moving on, Amazon coders say that their jobs now feel like warehouse work. People are beginning to hate their coding jobs with the advent of AGI, if we if you're almost there, or AI, which we already have. Because so this historian is quoting the times of machine work, the first industrial revolution, where machines started happening. And with machines, what happened was specialization. The era of hyper specialization started to come, you know. So hyper specialization, happened was, let's say if somebody is making a car, there's somebody who's making the door, there's somebody who's making the wheel, there's somebody who's making the chassis, there's somebody who's making just the gearbox, and so on. So with hyper specialization, things got very boring for people, you know. The whole being an expert, being a specialist came into play. Even in McDonald's, when you're looking at it, somebody's just frying the patties, somebody's just assembling the burger, packing it, somebody's on the billing counter. The jobs became boring and the wages went down, and speed went up. So these were the three things that happened with the first industrial revolution. Uh, Jobs became boring, they became specialist, and wages went down and speed went up. Now coders are saying that that's happening to themselves, finally they are feeling bored, they are having to do very specific tasks, they are having to do very difficult, very repetitive, very high speed, high churn work, and it's not nice. But what they're not realizing is that these are the best days. These are the best days, because very soon we are looking at complete replacement of a lot of people, you know. These things are not going to be stable. I was reading an interview of Eric Schmidt, the founder, not the founder, but the chief executive for Google for a long time, for the longest time. And he said it's going to create more jobs, but that is just intellectual dishonesty, or that is just a lie. It's basically either you are totally intellectually dishonest, or you just don't know how things are happening. But Eric Schmidt, it's not possible with Eric Schmidt that he doesn't know. He obviously knows what's happening. He knows how things are shaping up. But despite that, if he can actually say that, no, you know, there are going to be new jobs, it's just intellectual dishonesty at the zenith of it. There's nothing else. Because people are beginning. So just yesterday, I was talking to an entrepreneur who like actually fired 30% of people just by AI tools. And he runs a company of like 400 people. So that's happening. That's reality. Anybody who's trying to refute that is just lying to us, unfortunately. But Amazon coders are right now thinking that it's bad times, that they're having to be like burger flippers and so on and so forth. BDO, the company in the audit, professional services, consulting game, is looking at raising money at a multiple of four. A service company getting a multiple of four is amazing, but that's what's happening here. It's diluting 15 to 25%. So if you look at Indian Big Four, there's PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, EY, and then there's Grant Thornton, and then there's BDO. So there's six companies in the fray. And recently, it just came out that a lot of this these service companies are looking at private equity, and that is true, and that's finally coming true, because these companies are raising capital to expand their services. Now generally service companies do not do this. Service companies are not the kind of people who can raise money because the multiples are less, and they rely on internal accruals and growing basis. That's how service companies have generally grown. But India is looking at service companies because they are the ones who make money, who have created a lot of value and growth, especially when it comes to Grant Thornton, Bharat, and BDO and everybody. So that's what's happening. That's very interesting. If this happens, there's going to be a lot of activity as far as fundraising by service operations is considered. And VCs told us that this would never happen. We would never invest in service companies. Service companies don't scale, the whole American playbook. Well, they were wrong, obviously, like everything else. Very, very big news is that Starbucks is not making money in India. Starbucks is losing like 300 crore rupees for a revenue of 1400 crore rupees. So Starbucks is essentially looking at in FY24 it made a loss of 82 crores at 1200 crores, and in FY25 it's basically looking at 135 crores at 1500 crores. Yeah, 135 crores. Starbucks is not making money, of course. Starbucks is globally going through a very difficult time. So I read a book called, I've read two books by the founder of Starbucks. One is Pour Your Heart Into It. My Howard Schultz is the name of the guy. Extremely nice person. He wrote a book called How Pour Your Heart Into It, where he talked about saving Starbucks without losing its soul. So it was a turnaround story. After 2007-8, Starbucks went through a very difficult time. It was almost about to get, uh, you know, down the drain, but it sort of saved itself. And the second book I read was Onwards, where it was more of a journey thing. So right now, Starbucks is globally facing another drought, third uh, slowdown. It's possible that Howard Schultz will be back again because he's the only guy who has been able to steer the ship. You know, recently they fired their Indian CEO, the guy who was there, Srinivasan or something. But now Starbucks is gonna have to fight its way back. This is very antithetical to what VCs were also suggesting a few years earlier, and they also put their money where their mouth was. So they invested in a lot of coffee chains. A lot of coffee chains got serious investments like Blue Tokai, Third Wave, and a lot of people. Now, this should have been very interesting because if you look at Cafe Coffee Day, which was VG Siddharth sir, rest in peace, huge inspiration to many, including me. He committed suicide because Cafe Coffee Day, the flag bearer of the Indian coffee scene, failed to work at scale. It didn't make money at scale at all. And because of that, you saw the entire debt scene of Cafe Coffee Day not being able to get serviced, it not getting serviced, and then he having he had to sell his Mindtree shares to cover for the debt here, and that sort of led to such a rigmarole that he ended up giving upon his life, which is so sad. But even that wasn't cue enough that India is not really a coffee drinking country. So a lot of people are like, there are a lot of coffee chains in the West, a lot of coffee chains in China. That's cool, but India is a tea drinking nation, or India doesn't have that kind of per capita income required to make a coffee chain make money. People come and sit for hours and just drink one coffee. That's not cool, and that's exactly what's happening. So a lot of I I see coffee chains struggling for some time, and there's a lot of cannibalization happening. So when there's expansion, Starbucks still says it's gonna make 1,000 units. It's gonna open 1,000 units. So it's currently at 600 something. So it's gonna be at 1,000, which is okay. A lot of brand cannibalization happens in the stores go down. Some stores make a lot of money, and the other stores just don't make anything at all, which is what's happening with Starbucks and everybody else actually. So that's very interesting. That is, music labels are not being able to make money. Music labels seek new track as streaming hits play wall. So they're saying streaming companies have stopped with their advertising model. Streaming companies are not looking at advertising as the mainstay. They are now looking at revenue generation through subscriptions, which is leading to less money for streaming companies. I'm sorry, music labels. But they say it's overall a good run because when people translate to subscriptions for streaming companies, music labels are going to get a lot of money. But here's the thing: AI. AI is here as well. And what's happening with AI is that people are being able to make songs. I mean, machines are being able to make songs which people listen. And what streaming companies are trying to do is that they're trying to create their own AIs which make their own songs, which run on their own platforms, thereby making all the money, which is very interesting because uh, if they are trying to make money through playing of these songs and selling of these subscriptions, and these subscriptions get sold, but people listening to the songs are essentially listening to AI which these companies have made, then nobody wins but them. And that is coming. And to hedge that risk, music labels are also coming up with their AIs. So they're like, screw musicians, we need saving. We come up with our own AI, which is interesting. So it's bunch of people listening to AI music, and a lot of people say that no, musicians, people would not listen to AI music. People listen to music which is made by humans. But just wait and watch, folks. You won't know what hit you. Now we're looking at InfoEdge having raised money, having created another fund to invest in startups, which is very good news because are InfoEdge people are the best people in the Indian startup ecosystem. They are absolute legends and they are great folks. And it's very interesting that they are being able to do this. So when it comes to InfoEdge, we should be very lucky that they have decided to create the InfoEdge Fund 3, where they'll be raising 1,000 crores. They've bookmarked it. The board was like 99.9995% of people voted for it. Is self-monitoring making us paranoid? Of course. So there's a research which says self-monitoring has made people paranoid about their health and giving them anxiety. Well, they didn't have to do a research for that. It's one of the things that they could have just asked me. Yes, of course, self monitoring to a higher degree makes people paranoid, and that's obviously true. But the thing is, there's something called interventionism. You know what? Michael Jackson died. Michael Jackson had like a team of 30 doctors almost always monitoring him. Almost always monitoring him. But he died because of over interventionism. Because when you are not letting your body absorb some shocks in its way of going about things, then essentially it leads to big problems. Because if your body doesn't get shocks, it it becomes less resistant to big shocks, and those big shocks just take you out. And that's what's happening with people who are trying to like hyper moderate everything, uh, and it's causing a bit of a problem as far as a lot of analysis is considered. But yeah, uh, monitoring is obviously a good thing when it's done in moderation. So this is, there's a Latin saying, right? Between dosage is the difference between poison and medicine. So there it goes. That's obvious. IT's headcount growth likely to stay flat despite improved macro. That's okay. That's okay. But are you bullish on Indian IT? Can you be bullish on Indian IT considering everything that's going on in the world of AI? Well, for short term, yes, because these guys will lead to companies adopting more of AI. But in mid and long term, I'm very, very, very bearish on what Indian IT is going to do. The whole man and material model, that is at great risk, I think, with everything that's going to happen. But yeah, at this moment, the numbers are going down. Hiring is at low, 55,000 people only. When you look at engineering colleges, all the engineering students that come out of India churns out about, there are 12 lakh people, 15 lakh people who used to give JE. So India churns out like 5 to 6 lakh engineers every year. And major part of that, 1.5, 2 lakh people were hired by IT companies, and that's not going to hold on for a long time. So it's just anybody's guess what happens to those 5 lakh engineers that are being churned out from India. ePay aggregators focus on anti-fraud tech to shore up revenues. That's very interesting because payment aggregators were payment aggregators, but there's a lot of payment aggregators now due to which the competition has eaten up margins, and it's become very difficult for these guys to survive. Very difficult, but not very difficult. They should be making a lot of money, but anyway, you either die a hero or stay long enough to become a SaaS company. And that's what ePay companies are doing. ePay aggregators are now providing SaaS services to banks, the small banks. There are 600 banks in India, over 600, and they're trying to, modernize those banks, which is very interesting. So space tech companies are getting an opening as India seeks more eyes in the sky, which is interesting. As I began, that India is looking at them making a lot of stuff in India because defense is a big trouble as far as India is considered. We are China on the east, Pakistan on the west, and there's this whole Bangladesh thing that's also becoming a problem. So I would be hoping that India's defense budget uh, takes a really serious rise. Last year, it only grew 9.7%, 9.5%, which, counting inflation, didn't mean anything, right? And a lot of it goes to pensions and maintenance and salaries and everything. So equipment needs a fillip, and I hope Indian defense budget proves to be valuable for Indian space tech, defense tech, and me till I hold those stocks. So that's pretty much it, folks, for the day. This is interesting, very interesting. I hope you had a nice time with me on Thinkers Frequencies first episode. This is the first time I did that, so I'm just going to answer a few questions. Good, I appreciate the brief summary on all points. We assume keep growing. Being a musician, does AI discourage you? Oh, yes. Being a musician is itself a very, very sad deal, but AI is a different level of sadness when it comes to music business is considered. Like people listening to AI, it's very sad, very sad. And so music used to be a product business that you made a song and that song sold, and that's how you earned money. So the business model was that you make an album, release one or two songs as singles, throw their music videos out in the open, create beautiful music videos, pieces of art, and then those music videos go out, and then you make money by going on tours promoting that album. So tours becomes your way of going out and promoting your album so that you can make money, and that sort of flipped, right? Because albums don't make money, you release the album for free and try to attract people to your tours now so that they make money. Like, you only way you make money is through the service business. You try and reach out to every person and start playing live. That is itself pretty crazy because the product has become free, you know. And now the product is actually going to be made by AI. So even the visibility of your music, which is already a big problem, by the way, the biggest, because the music which is visible is like very tiny percent of the music which is actually made, right? Independent musicians don't have the distribution muscle, but now distribution is even going to be harder because then they're going to be tier 1 musicians, the winner takes all, then AI, and then independent musicians. So that's going to be very hard. But it is what it is, and that's okay, that's fine. You don't need to worry about anything. Who cares? One of the wonders of the world is going down. One of the blunders of the world is that no one cares. That's about it. So, Thinker's Frequency, first episode. I hope I didn't miss out anything. I hope you found it valuable, that we ended up discussing everything. This was great. I benefited a lot by talking into it. Abhishek says, thanks for bringing econ basic wording into daily chaos. Superb. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Abhishek. I am glad you liked it. So, see you tomorrow. Bye bye.